Vuyo, good evening. Apparently that beard is doing wonders for you, but outside of paying you compliments, what else did Gwede Mantashe have to say in terms of what was expected during his time in the stand today on behalf of the ANC and what he ultimately produced?
Let's stick to the important issues of the day, Kathy. Well, from what was disclosed here today by the National Chairperson of the ANC, the governing party's engagement with the Commission will come in at least 4 parts. And I'll start right at the end. Towards the end of the life of the Commission, the President of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa, we are told, will engage with the Commission. But before then, there would have been at least 2 other engagements, one by the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, J.C. Duarte, but today, of course, was specifically around the ANC's engagement with the banks, trying to give a background and a context to that engagement. Let's start with just something from Gwede Mantashe's input as to why, as the African National Congress, when they were approached by Oakbay, which was a Gupta company, to engage, they then subsequently felt a need to engage with the bank. This is what Gwede Mantashe had to say.
And resolved that decision of the ANC to meet the bank was driven by the following concerns. That is the ANC now. Mainly loss of jobs. That is what drove that. The perception that the bankers were colluding and the perception that banks were exercising power of white monopoly capital against black business. And therefore that is the observation of the NEC, that is the basis of engagement between the ANC and the banks.
So Mantashe then felt that because they are a listening organization that represents the interests of everybody, they then felt compelled to actually approach the banks. They spoke to ABSA, they spoke to Standard Bank, as the only other bank, a net bank, and the only bank they didn't speak to was FNB. And at those meetings, he says, they got a lecture of a lifetime, and I'm paraphrasing here, because that's when then the banks explained to them why it is that they had to do what they did with those Gupta bank accounts. But I'm going to bring in now Aldrin St. Pierre, my colleague, because as we were sitting through the proceedings today, there was a lot, Aldrin, that we picked up, not only from what Gwede Mantashe explained as the reasons that they had to engage with the ANC, but a bit of nuance as to then what happened in those rooms when the leadership of the ANC had to sit and listen to outsiders who wanted them to go and appeal on their behalf. Your takeaways?
And I think it's pretty extraordinary that you have Oakbay's Nazim Hawa was the CEO, write this letter to Gwede Mantashe and demanding, or rather not demanding, but requesting a meeting with the ANC's top 6 officials to pressurize the banks to reopen the accounts of the Guptas. And quite interestingly, what they did there, what Oakbay did, is that they used the issue around jobs, that there could be 7.5 thousand jobs could be lost if Oakbay and its subsidiaries do not continue to do business. And the ANC said, yeah, well, let's engage on that basis. But then what the ANC then says, well, Gwede Mantashe then says, is that that message was not relayed to the banks, that the issue that we have, the biggest issue that we have, is that there could be potential job losses. Can't you guys relook at the accounts of these Gupta companies? Which is something quite interesting. What was strange for me, though, is that I thought that the evidence leaders might actually go to a point where they say, for instance, Standard Bank. We know that Gwede Mantashe said that he has some issues with the testimony that was led by Standard Bank Stinton, but he didn't go as far as saying that, for instance, Stinton testified that there was pressure put on Standard Bank to reopen the accounts, and Sim Shabalala, the group CEO, was so angry, and he's never seen him that angry. What Gwede Mantashe is telling us that, well, the meeting was cordial, according to this letter that was sent by Sim Shabalala, and also indicating that Stinton did say that actually I'm the person who wrote that letter, and then going as far as saying that for him that was extraordinary because you don't belittle a group CEO.
So they then get this lecture from the banks about how they conduct themselves, how they are governed by rules, and how the whole system works. After which the ANC decides not to pursue the matter any further. Gwede Mantashe then proceeds to talk about how the ANC was, if not the first, they were not the first people, they were certainly among the first people to actually grapple with the whole concept and phenomenon of state capture.
Yeah, and he starts off by saying that at the time that state capture became what he calls a reality in the party, or them realizing that state capture is a reality, there was an internal debate that had already been taking place, and that was a debate around corporate capture. And that was one of the issues that was raised with the banks as well, whether the banks were part of corporate capture to such an extent that some of the rules, for instance, that the banks have to follow when it comes to closing down accounts without informing the business owner why the account is being closed, whether that at all does not hamper transformation in the business sector. And that for me was quite interesting that that point has been put across. But then the other issue is that when this gets then debated in the ANC then takes a step back and says, we're not getting involved, this is where this matter ends. And then there's a telephonic call that's put through to Nazim Hawa that this is where this matter ends.
But then what's also interesting is how the evidence leader was saying, but Mr. Mantashe, as much as you're saying, as the ANC, that you grappled with this issue and you would want to take credit for the establishment of this inquiry, the fact of the matter is that this inquiry was established on the back of court challenges.
Court applications that came through. One of the court applications was actually brought by the DA, and Mantashe going as far as saying that, listen, there was an ANC resolution that said the State Capture Commission of Inquiry must be set up, and of course we know that the NEC had decided on that, but the president at the time, Jacob Zuma, did not go ahead with setting up that Commission of Inquiry. Then there was the 54th National Conference that took a resolution, and eventually the State Capture Commission of Inquiry was set up. But as the evidence leader, Philip Mokoena, has indicated that it was after many attempts to try and push the State Capture Commission of Inquiry to be set up, that it was eventually set up. But Gwede Mantashe is saying that even if former President Jacob Zuma did not set up that Commission of Inquiry, President Cyril Ramaphosa would have done that.
Lastly, before I hand back to Kathy, very briefly, Aldrin, right at the beginning, the ANC asked for time to actually make an opening statement, which in itself was interesting. But then what was even more interesting for me was that right at the end, they also felt a need to actually call a journalist to put into context their input today. And again, both right at the beginning when he made that statement and when he made the closing remarks at that impromptu briefing that he gave to us a short while ago, he insisted that the ANC is not playing to the gallery, but that it takes this commission seriously and wants its members to actually come in their numbers and give testimony, because this is important for our country.
And I think it's very important that the ANC has done that right at the beginning of the testimony and right at the end as well, re-emphasizing that the ANC supports this Commission of Inquiry. And earlier on, as we were discussing, even the remarks that were made by this chairperson of the Commission, that he certainly still has confidence in the legal team of the Commission and how the Commission has been set up, because this is very important. If you take into consideration, for instance, Mzwandile Manyi, the testimony that he gave, where he almost cast aspersions on the evidence leaders, that they are treating him like a hostile witness, and the Commission chairperson having to intervene and trying to protect Manyi to assure him that, listen, we are not here to attack you, but we're really trying to get to the bottom of this issue of state capture, because this will certainly then reinvigorate confidence that the people may have lost over the past few days during the protests that we've seen outside of the State Capture Commission, that the State Capture Commission is very important for the country and everyone must come and support the State Capture Commission. But here's the problem that I have, though. Gwede Mantashe says that state capture was a reality. Philip Mokoena then asked him, is there anything that you can point to that says that state capture is a reality? And we did not get that. And that, for me, is one of the biggest problems, I think, that the State Capture Commission of Inquiry will face. If you have the likes of Gwede Mantashe, who says that state capture is a reality, and Pravin Gordhan, who says there are ministers in cabinet who are part of state capture, but they're not willing to come out and give us the actual names and trying to help the Commission get to the bottom of that.
Perhaps it speaks to the fact that Gwede Mantashe did also say that among the things that the whole phenomenon of state capture has done has actually been to, he didn't use the word divide, but they have gone through a lot, especially over the past 5 years, in the main because of issues that arose as a result of debating and arguing over this actual phenomenon and what it is doing not only to the ANC but to the country as well. And that's where we're going to leave it for now, Kathy. And with that, it's back to you.
All right, Vuyo, thanks for that. Vuyo Mvoko was out at the State Capture Inquiry for us today.